Hi, I'm Joe Knight, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Setpoint Systems. I'm also author of a best-selling book, Financial Intelligence. Now, what we've talked about in terms of project management are some of the things that we need to look at or see when we work with projects. Now, first of all, we talked about the 10 things that can happen to a project manager. We also talked about what it means to be a project-based company and how you can become a walking dead company in a prior video. We also went over some of the basics of traditional project management, how we track projects financially, and why that method gets us in a lot of trouble as project managers and as companies that manage projects. What we're going to do in this video is go over some of the fundamental processes and things that we do at Setpoint to keep us out of trouble, to avoid becoming a walking dead company, and to track our projects financially in a way that we think is much more rational than the traditional approach. Now let's talk about how we track projects at Setpoint and why it's different from the traditional approach. There are two bits of information we all need to have to track our projects in our businesses. One is we need to be able to track very closely how much time we're putting into our jobs, hours, and costs, labor costs. And we need to track very closely our material costs, or the specific things we have to buy. We take those two bits of information and use them to do weekly updates and to measure how we're doing financially and schedule-wise on our projects. Let's talk about the first piece of information, the hours or the labor cost. In a traditional approach, we would look at our total costs, labor and material, and compare that to the amount of costs that we've expended on a project to measure our percent achieved, and that would represent our earned revenue and therefore our profit on the job. We feel like that's a very dangerous approach because obviously the material cost in a project doesn't really get the project done. The only way you get a project done is through labor. So we measure our progress and therefore our financial revenue, or the way we earn revenue, exclusively through how much labor we think we've completed relative to the whole project. We track our labor meticulously on a weekly basis using our own database. What we do with that data is we use it to measure our progress in terms of percent achieved. There are two ways we do that. One is we have labor categories, sections if you will, of different types of labor: engineering, assembly, mechanical, electrical design, drafting, all these kinds of things. When we do a job, we have budgets in each of these sections. We track week by week every hour that we put into each of those sections, and then the project manager has to update how much work is remaining in each of these sections, and then the system simply calculates total hours in the project, calculates how many hours we've already spent, and from there can get a percentage of work done. For example, if we spend 100 hours and we estimate the project to be at 500 hours, that means we're 20% complete. Now remember, this means that we might be over or under budget because the project manager has to update that weekly. That would be taken against our revenue in the project, that 20%, and that would give us a number for how much we've earned in terms of work in the project. Now when we have larger projects and the labor categories get too high, we use an earned value method, very similar to the methods that are used by others. Let's look at this one. We always track our schedule on our projects, and we have Gantt charts. We try to keep our Gantt charts down to details where we have 1 or 2 week tasks all the way through the project. Then what we do with an earned value table is we assign values to each of those tasks. If we had a $100,000 project, logic would tell us when we've completed all of these tasks, we've earned $100,000. So what we do, in essence, is we weight each of these tasks by the amount of effort required, and the total equals $100,000. Then as we complete tasks, we just take percentage achieved by task. That gives us an earned value for those tasks, divide it by the total budget in the contract, and that too gives us a percentage achieved, only measuring the effort and not the material costs in the job. Again, that gives us that percentage we can use. Now the second piece of information that's very important is tracking your material costs. We check and track our material costs by category again on a weekly basis. Our project engineers compare what we've spent to the budget and make an estimate to complete on that. Then our simple way of measuring our revenue and our profit on a project is by taking the total revenue in the project, whatever we sold that machine for, subtracted from it our best estimate of what our total material cost is going to be to get a gross profit without labor number. Then we take our percentage that I just described to you, that percentage complete based on either our labor table or on an earned value table. We multiply it by the gross profit number, and that is in fact the amount of gross profit or margin we recognize on that job in total. We subtract from that what we've done in prior weeks to measure how much progress we made in the current week. This gives us a good measure on each project of where we stand and where we're going. Consequently, the important part of the system is to make sure that hours are entered in on a daily basis, and so every Monday when our project engineers go to update, they have that information. And secondarily, we have information on material costs as the POs are issued. Not when we paid for the bill, not when we got the parts, but when we actually issue POs, so that our project engineers can see how much we've committed on the project in terms of material, and then they can of course estimate what they have left to achieve, compare that to the budget as a benchmark. Those are the tools we use, the fundamentals that we use to measure our projects on a weekly basis. Now, as you can see from this, we don't follow the traditional cost spent versus total cost approach that we think is very dangerous and creates walking dead companies. And of course, our goal at Setpoint is to avoid becoming a walking dead company. In our next video, we're going to talk about how we use that data to create our board, where we measure our overall profitability on a weekly basis and we share that information with our employees. And remember, project management can be fun if you do it right.
Good project management starts with a solid foundation. Setpoint is a leader in lean automation solutions. We've been providing custom automated solutions for over 18 years.